The heads of the BRICS coalition of rising economies assembled in Rio de Janeiro, with Donald Trump's trade duties and the looming threats to the world economy dominating the discussions. Collectively, these nations embody more than half of humanity and nearly half of global production. But the real story is larger than statistics. Subtly yet unmistakably, what began as a small circle of 5 countries has expanded into a formidable alliance, with the capacity to redirect the flow of capital, energy, commerce, and authority across continents. This is not simply enlargement. It is a deliberate recalibration of world power, an intentional effort to tilt the balance away from its old centers of control. In the beginning, BRICS was little more than a clever acronym describing the emerging economies of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa. It was an idea full of potential, fast-growing nations uniting to increase their clout in finance, trade, and diplomacy. But by 2025, that concept had broken beyond its initial limits. Today, BRICS has become a vast network with 11 full members, 13 associates, and no fewer than 32 countries eager to join. The shift has been both rapid and dramatic. On January 6, 2025, Indonesia was officially welcomed, adding a huge consumer base and a vital Southeast Asian presence. Saudi Arabia, invited in August 2023, was expected to join in early 2024, yet still weighs its ties with Washington against the pull of BRICS. Meanwhile, at the opening of 2024, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates were inducted, each offering unique advantages: control over shipping routes, immense energy resources, and untapped economic potential. The bloc's influence is now impossible to ignore. Reports from the 17th BRICS Summit revealed the enlarged group now represents more than 45% of world GDP and over half of the planet's people. This is no longer a loose partnership of developing nations. It has become a gravitational center in the global order. Yet even more telling than its current size is the list of aspirants waiting at the door. Of the 32 expressing interest, 23 have already filed formal applications. The roster reads like a roadmap to the future. Bahrain and Kuwait, energy-rich Gulf states seeking markets beyond the West. Turkey and Vietnam, straddling vital trade corridors. Mexico, offering a bridge to Latin America and proximity to the United States itself. Belarus, unlocking pathways into Eastern Europe. Each applicant represents not only territory but strategic leverage, each one signaling that the existing global framework no longer satisfies the ambitions of the rising world. The attraction is not just ideological but practical. Membership grants entry to the new development bank, built as an alternative to the IMF and World Bank. Since 2016, it has invested $32 billion across 96 major projects, power plants, railways, industrial complexes, often in local currencies, sidestepping the US dollar. For developing nations, this means relief from dependency, a chance to build growth without being exposed to currency shocks or the political strings that accompany Western aid. The July 2025 Rio Summit became a decisive moment. Expansion dominated the agenda, but equally vital were the ground rules for the future. Under Brazil's presidency, the alliance leaned toward cooperative development, emphasizing solidarity within the global South, rather than outright confrontation with the West. The message was intentional. BRICS is not merely opposing the existing order, it is preparing to lead a new one, with calculation rather than noise, with strategy rather than spectacle. Even so, divisions surfaced. Xi Jinping was absent for the first time since 2013, citing scheduling pressures, while Vladimir Putin, constrained by an ICC warrant, joined only via video. Their absence was symbolic, highlighting the fragile optics of a bloc still carving out its role. Behind closed doors, a deeper conflict emerged. China and Russia pressed for fast-track expansion, hoping to pull in as many states as possible to fortify their orbit. Brazil and India, more cautious, argued for careful selection, ensuring new members fit the bloc's long-term blueprint rather than diluting its mission. This friction, between urgency and restraint, inclusivity and discipline, may shape the alliance's next chapter. Still, the momentum cannot be denied. From 5 to 11 members, from symbolic beginnings to real financial power, from a catchy acronym to a magnet for nations seeking freedom from dollar dominance, BRICS has become something larger than its creators ever imagined. With 34 nations signaling interest and nearly 24 already applying, the bloc stands at the edge of its boldest transformation yet. Once dismissed as a symbolic grouping of emerging powers, BRICS now positions itself as an alternative center of global authority, able to redraw alliances, reshape financial systems, and reimagine the political map of the 21st century. As BRICS steadily widened its reach, it also found itself maneuvering through a strained and turbulent global trade environment, particularly in its escalating standoff with the United States. By 2025, what many commentators labeled an all-out economic conflict between Washington and the BRICS alliance had reached a climax, fueled largely by the bloc's continued imports of discounted Russian oil. For the U.S., this was framed as outright defiance of Western sanctions. For BRICS nations, it was a pragmatic strategy to secure affordable energy supplies and reinforce independence from Western-dominated systems. President Donald Trump's administration countered with what analysts described as a divide-and-isolate approach, hitting BRICS members one by one with tariffs and trade penalties rather than confronting the group collectively. The first strike landed on Liberation Day, when China was slapped with severe import duties. Beijing retaliated sharply, raising tariffs as high as 145% before eventually settling them at roughly 30%. Instead of backing down, China took the opportunity to deepen cooperation with its BRICS partners, widening access to its domestic markets and establishing trade corridors designed to sidestep U.S. influence. India was the next target. Once called a strategic ally by Trump, New Delhi faced a 25% tariff that soon escalated to 50%. Rattling exporters and complicating its balancing act between East and West. Brazil soon followed, subjected to an identical 50% tariff. In response, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva urged a coordinated BRICS reaction rather than bilateral talks with Washington. South Africa then became the focus, hit with a 30% tariff, but in this case, the clash spilled into politics. Trump accused Pretoria of discriminatory policies against the country's white minority, an allegation South African leaders flatly denied. At the same time, reports suggested the U.S. was selectively offering entry to certain South African citizens under special provisions, further straining ties. Russia, already under sweeping sanctions, faced no additional tariffs, but its role in the struggle was pivotal. Moscow placed itself at the forefront of BRICS' push for de-dollarization, a deliberate strategy to cut dependency on the U.S. dollar, shield economies from American financial pressure, and gradually redesign the global monetary order. Russian officials described the effort as not only defensive, but also long overdue. Central to this transformation was the new development bank. Since its founding in 2016, the NDB had approved more than $32 billion in loans spanning nearly 100 infrastructure and development ventures. Its distinction lay not just in scale but in execution. Many loans were issued in local currencies instead of U.S. dollars, giving member nations financial breathing room and protection against currency shocks. For economies such as Egypt, Indonesia, and Ethiopia, this was not a convenience. It was a lifeline, a way to stabilize budgets vulnerable to sudden dollar fluctuations. Indonesia's formal admission into BRICS, confirmed by Brazil, marked a milestone in the group's evolution. With its inclusion, the bloc now consisted of 10 nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Indonesia, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE. This enlargement underscored not just BRICS' growing weight among emerging economies, but also its ambition to reshape the international system. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres underscored the significance, pointing out that the post-war economic structure was built by rich countries for rich countries, with African nations excluded from the original Bretton Woods negotiations. BRICS, by contrast, offered the developing world not just a place at the table, but the chance to influence the agenda. Energy remained the unseen currency powering this movement. If Saudi Arabia were to officially join, BRICS would inherit not only one of the world's largest producers, but also a state with enormous sway in OPEC. Together with Russia, Iran, and the UAE, this would give the bloc significant leverage over global energy prices and distribution. For Washington, this was more than a concern, it was a direct threat. If oil trade shifted into currencies other than the US dollar, one of the cornerstones of American economic dominance could begin to erode. Still, expansion carried risks. Every new entrant brought potential gains but also fresh complications. The bloc's members represented a mosaic of political systems, from democracies to monarchies to authoritarian states, each with diverging priorities and interests. Reaching consensus would not be easy. Trump's tactic of targeting members individually aimed to exploit these fractures, hoping some would prioritize U.S. market access over bloc solidarity. Yet there was also the possibility that such pressure would harden BRICS' unity, strengthening their determination to create an independent economic framework beyond Western reach. What is undeniable is that BRICS is no longer a theoretical counterbalance. It is a tangible force. With a broader membership, innovative financing mechanisms, and vast influence over essential resources, it now stands as a pivotal player in shaping the global economy. The deepening alignment between Brazil and China, the B and C of BRICS Plus, symbolizes this new momentum, positioning the group as a direct challenger to the US-led G7. The implications stretch far beyond the bloc itself. For developing nations, BRICS offers a genuine alternative: fairer lending terms, expanded access to markets, and greater leverage in international politics. For established powers, it presents a challenge to a system that has safeguarded their privileges for decades. Decisions taken within BRICS about membership, trade, finance, and energy are already reverberating through markets, affecting currency flows, commodity values, and global stability. The central question now is whether BRICS can deliver on its promise of multipolarity, or whether internal rivalries will hold it back. Either way, its rise is no longer speculative, the shift is underway, and its consequences will define the next chapter of world affairs. What do you think? Is this expansion the beginning of a more balanced international order, or will cracks in the alliance prevent it from reaching its full potential? Whatever the outcome, the global balance of power is shifting, and BRICS is at the heart of it,